Um, uh, uh, um, the issue occurs to me because I've just come off of my 60th reunion gigantic Zoom with Brandeis alumni. And there was, it wasn't as useful for everyone because some members were not aware of sharing for a great amount of time. So then others didn't have time to come in. So good, Murray. Glad you're on it.
Well, I hope, we're all practiced conference participants and no, we're not supposed to dominate.
Been a long time, seminar wise.
Yes, and some may have become domineering in the meantime. I think we're pretty much all here. There were, I think, maybe 21 on the mailing list. And I've heard that from 2 people who say they're not coming and about 9 that say they are. So I'm guessing practically everybody will. And those who are coming think it's a real good idea. So I'm assuming that there's more enthusiasm out there. Okay, the general plan is that we'll go around and, let me ask, Carrie, are we all going to turn into pumpkins in an hour or can we keep going?
So I have you booked for an hour and a half, actually.
Okay.
So you have until 1:30 Pacific. You won't turn into pumpkins, but we do need it's kind of this technical thing where the number of meetings we have going on is limited.
Okay.
So we kind of have to keep it moving, but you do have an hour and a half. So.
Okay. So let us know when we've got about 15 minutes to go. Okay, so the plan is that we will all go around and introduce ourselves a little bit. And the idea is to build up an agenda of topics that we all think we ought to hear each other about. So say a little about ourselves and what we think are the issues we want to hear about. And I think that'll emerge out of what we also say we're doing at the moment. 15 years ago, we met at about the time we were nearing retirement. At retirement age, we were about 65. And it turned out only about half of us were thinking of retiring. The other half were not. By 10 years later, almost all of us had retired. I'm guessing that we've all retired now. I may be one of the last. But last time, okay, Alan is saying no. Last time we weren't all retired. So if you're still working, say that. If not, one of the things we found was that even when you retire, you keep doing the same stuff, mostly, except some changes came in as we felt that our peers had new problems that we wanted to help with. And by that, I don't mean just read peers, but peers in the world. So I'll start with me. I'm still an anthropologist, having just retired, really to be more involved in anthropology and less in the local affairs of my university, University of Texas at Dallas. Fortunately, I have a very good health plan. So I am amazed at the amount of money that is covered for the things that I now seem to be under the knife for. Nothing terrible, but I just had one cataract removed and I'm going to have another.
Oh, yeah.
It just, welcome to the world of modern medicine. It's just astounding, the things that can be done if you have enough money. The main reason for retiring is I'm diverting my attention more to anthropology. I also was afraid that if I didn't write everything I knew, my brain would go bad and I'd lose it. A friend of mine, Terry Neal, on his deathbed asked his wife, what's going to happen to all this stuff that I know? And it's been haunting me ever since, about 10 years. My main concerns that provoked my interest in this meeting are thinking of my wife and myself, and we don't have children. We'll leave everything to read, but the question is in what order and how do we clean up things and get ready to go? And when should we start? And should we instead just be out, traveling around and seeing as much as we can? And if so, why? Life becomes strange when you're no longer doing things in order to teach, which is a way to tell people about them. So you raise the question, well, why are you doing this? So that's me for right now. And I'll pass it. Let's go. The trouble is this order, it keeps moving around.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't think the order of participants on the side keeps moving around. So the next person in my sidebar is, is Carrie, so that's okay. And the next is Alan. So Alan, can you go?
Well, I have been studying viruses since right after graduating from Reed. I am still studying viruses. I work at NIH and been in Maryland for most of that time. And I am thinking about the possibility of retiring, which is actually a new development. And I'm just thinking about it. And certainly one question that I'm quite apprehensive about is, what would I do if I didn't get up and go to work every day?
Yeah.
Although I don't travel to work anymore.
Alan, could you tell a little bit about virus, what's piece of the virus story you had a role in? That's so interesting.
Sure. Well, I think most important thing to say is how much the field changes and how rapidly the field changes, and how as the field changes, questions are answered and we develop the capability to ask new questions that we couldn't even imagine before. So there's not one theme underlying it all, but I have mostly studied, or a lot I've studied, how the virus particle is put together from the pieces, or how the pieces are designed to go together to make the virus particle. And the work has, as I was saying, the field changes. My work has become more and more biophysical as some people in the field, some areas of the field have become more and more biophysical.
Can I ask a question?
I'll just add one more thing to that. And you have to run as fast as you can to keep up with the field.
Right.
And whether you're able to do that, I think depends a lot on what you learned when you were a little college student and graduate student all those decades ago. And I feel the field is now going to leave me behind. That what I know from what I learned all those decades ago won't enable me to keep up with the field as it asks new questions.
Yeah, I just want can somebody tell me what the ground rules are, how long we have to speak?
Well, we shouldn't take too long on any one person, it
Yeah,
sounds.
don't take too long. I'd say about 5
And
minutes for our
also about
introduction.
how to handle the questions.
I'll handle the questions arbitrarily but fairly. Let's make it, say, about 4 minutes for our introduction, because there are nearly 20 of us.
So maybe my time is up.
Yeah.
Next, please.
Next on my list is Cliff.
Oh. Well, I think they might. I'm an anthropologist too, and retired from paid employment.
Turn off your own volume, and then I think you'll be okay.
Where's my book? Which one?
It should be a function button on the top.
No, now he's muted.
Liv, can you unmute? Sorry about
I
that.
think she has to turn off her volume.
There, right.
That's good.
Oh, and is it all right?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, I retired from the University of Helsinki in 2005, but I still edit a very esoteric journal, Borneo Studies. But I'm coming to the same thing, I think, of Alan, of it's hard to keep up with the field. And there's a lot of new universities opening in Malaysia and Indonesia. So it's a lot of literature to keep track of. And I'm trying to get younger people to take over my job. So I'll finally retire, I think, in this year or the next year completely. Yeah, I married a Reed eventually. I had my Reed sweetheart, Louise. We parted at graduation, and then another couple of tragedies in my life. So the thing about loss means grief is actually something I want to talk about a bit, maybe. I lost a son who was a student at Reed in a mountain climbing accident, rock climbing accident. And I just that year, that was 1996, 7, I just come back to Reed actually to teach for 2 years. So I came back to Portland, and it was when Louise read in the newspaper about my son Andy's death that she caught on the phone and contacted me. And then we met, and we got married and had a quite wonderful life after that. But she got ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and died of that. So that was a long, drawn out, terribly painful experience of caring for her. But I've actually returning to anthropology and writing again was a great comfort to me, actually, to get back writing. So, and Louise and I, before her death, I'd taken the indigenous people in Borneo called Dayak, and there was a new university established in Malaysia, in Sarawak, the state of Sarawak, and they established a program of Dayak studies, and it was a nice way to finish my career, I thought, of being the chairman, the sort of founding chairman of the Dayak Studies program. And while we were there, there was a project I'd never had a chance to work with. I encountered it early in my field work of a ritual healing session, a healing ritual involving the singing of a long epic, heroic epic. That got me back actually into sort of interest in Homer and oral poetry. And we worked on that together. We did the field work together, recorded it, and transcribed and translated it for a Cultural Heritage Foundation in Sarawak. And we just completed that work, and Louise was diagnosed first with breast cancer, which she recovered from, and then with ALS. So it was 2 years really of caring for her. And after that, I published then the book, and that was doing that final writing. And then I was invited, a friend invited me to write a chapter in another book, which I worked on at the time. That getting back to work, that really helped me recover from that.
Yeah.
What else? So I'm actually then about in the process now of downsizing, and I'll give my library to this Cultural Heritage Foundation, all of my materials on Borneo, and tons of sound recordings over the years. When I left, I did my graduate work. This is how I came to know Anne Marie. Her husband was my senior thesis advisor, and we remained in contact for years. And he was extraordinarily helpful to me. But after Reed, my first field work was actually again in Borneo, but with sea nomadic people. And so I still do work. Strangely, I tried to pass beyond that into other field work, but sea nomads have become an interest for Southeast Asianists. And so I have to go back, and I was just in a webinar on sea nomads from Myanmar, of all places. So I guess that's about it.
Yeah. Work produces friendships. Friendships last. You don't abandon them.
No.
Next on my list is Ethan.
Oh, okay. Well, I've lived in 8 states and 1 province. I got a doctorate in physics and ended up working in aerospace. Retired from the Boeing company about 14 years ago. And I got, strangely, my greatest stretch was living in Alabama, working on a space station. And was married, lost my first wife. You may have known Barbara Cronbach. We divorced, but then she and our son died in a fire in British Columbia quite a few years ago now. But in the meantime, my career has mostly been in mixture somehow of physics and artificial intelligence, and working with NASA when possible. And then avocation, caving. I like to caved in several states, and although that hasn't happened the last couple of years due to the pandemic. And well, let's see, health's pretty good, except a loss of vision due to AMD. Nevertheless, I highly recommend cataract surgery if you haven't had it. It's not just a matter of focus and getting rid of obstruction, but you don't have to worry about sunglasses to prevent ultraviolet anymore. So, and since retirement, I've been politically active and realized that it's a good thing I retired, because I really don't have time to work anymore. There's far more than I can do to keep up with things. Mostly been active through well, the County Democratic Party here in Portland is very progressive. They're a pleasant group to work with. They're the most influential party in most influential county in the state, and people good to work with. So it's a nice idea. Also, the Alliance for Democracy, and to some extent, Extermination Rebellion, which my son, my older son now, lives in Portland and is highly involved with. So,
What'd you say? Extermination of what?
Extermination Rebellion.
I don't know what that is.
Called XR. Oh, they've gotten headlines mostly in London. They're a climate activist.
Oh, okay.
In London, they've blocked roads
Right.
to the G7, and they've got some headlines that way. Just
Ethan, can I just ask a couple little specific brief questions?
Sure.
What I really love is hearing that you do the AI and the NASA and the space stuff, and then you go down into caves. I really love that, two sides of that coin. But tell me, is there anything you can say about any piece of AI or space stuff that your physics was the I don't know, the critical or the the piece that you chipped in
I
with?
don't, well, I don't know that we got it really got incorporated anywhere, but we worked on monitoring, basically diagnostic modeling systems, modeling the liquid oxygen loading into the Kennedy space at the
Mhm.
launch platforms. And then we did some bubble monitoring. I got to fly on the Vomit Comet a couple of times, and the memory is a picture of me looking a little green up near the ceiling somewhere. And, but,
Thank you.
Yeah. But that's yeah. So it's good things.
It
Good
slipped
people.
out in this case, but I hope people will mention where they're living now.
Oh yeah, I'm in Portland.
At Portland, so
Yeah.
I hope other people will mention it too.
Yes.
as
Portland's always been home to me. I knew I'd be back.
I think my list keeps hopping around. So that plan is no good. Next on my list right now is Carol.
Right.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I recognize everybody's names, but not the faces anymore.
Can I interrupt? By 50th high school reunion, took pictures out of the original high school yearbook
Yeah.
and gave us ID cards with those pictures on them. And when we first arrived, this was this room full of old people, and I didn't recognize any of them, but I recognized the pictures in the ID cards.
Yeah.
And after a while, they began to merge.
Did they? Did they? Okay. Well, I think that there are a lot of questions that come with, the different stages of life. And I have found, it's kind of hard to plan ahead, for one thing. And I'm still working. I'm a clinical psychologist. I got a PhD after leaving Reed, but I raised children for a while in between. And I didn't go into academia. I worked in the applied side of psychology. I really enjoyed clinical work. Worked in community mental health and in one of the Kaiser psychiatry departments, and also private practice. And so people are, just endlessly fascinating, really. And I'm sort of almost retired. But that is a question I have, like a lot of you. Work is very, very meaningful and satisfying.
Right.
So what do you do next? Or, should you retire? Or I feel like a lot of you, my job doesn't involve anything physical, like a ditch digger or something. So I can keep working if I want to, but then, I don't know, should I retire? Or
I would say not unless you feel that you're not making progress. That's what made me retire.
How about volunteering?
Well, that's what we found. People volunteer to do the same stuff, but they have more freedom to choose.
yeah, so I've sort of volunteered to do some of the same stuff too. I volunteer for a nonprofit that helps people who are aging, actually, with those problems. So what else to say? I don't know. I think that loss of sort of physical capabilities is a big problem that I experience. Although I'm in good health and exercising and walking and doing a lot of stuff, but still I can see the limitations in eyesight, in agility, or even picking up little things picking up little things. You lose the sensitivity on your fingers. And well, anyway, those are some of the things I experience.
as we proceed, it looks like we may have more than even 2 that are still not retired. So yeah, let's keep that on the table. I have now brought up my Excel list as which I hope will not move around. So I'm going to go by it. And although you can't see it. And the first person on that list is John Appleton. Where's John? There he is.
I've done pretty much in my life what I wanted to do. It's over soon because I have MDS, leukemia. And so I've had 3 wives. I've had 2 male lovers. I live in White River Junction, Vermont. Yay, Bernie. And you know, I'm a composer and I still compose. I taught for 50 years and then, well, I still compose, but I don't teach anymore. I lived in Sweden for 4 years, Tokyo for 3 years, Tonga, Moscow, but all of the music belated. And so I have 2 children. Jennifer is 60, psychotherapist. And Jason is 54 and a professional musician. And I don't know. Reed was the best time in my life. The education was so profound, and I will never regret coming here. I applied for 14 universities and only accepted in Reed. And that's because E. Kimbach McCall believed in me. And so I don't think I have any more to say.
Okay, we'll come
Really
back.
interesting though, John.
The next person on my list is Tom Campbell.
Mhm.
Where's Tom? Is he here?
Where are you?
No, I don't see him. And Robert Frazier, I see, is not here. Priscilla, not here.
Really?
Anne Marie,
I'm here.
you're here.
I was your comment about, you know, on your deathbed saying, what should we do with all that I know? And, well, as a writer and a painter, not so much of a musician. I've, you know, more or less put it into my poems and prose. And in one form or another, but it's pretty much there, what I know. Not all of it, but you know, what I want to say.
Right.
I've more or less said. And as for continue, I mean, I don't know, artists continue if they possibly can. You know, Josh is a composer, so he composes, and you know, and I write and I paint. I can't play the piano anymore because I'm just obscure muscle condition that doesn't show, but it really shows again. But that's the only health problem. And I have a husband who's 93, and he's now broken 2 hips. That's all. He's healthy otherwise, but the last one, and we've moved twice. Moving is really traumatic, but it is for everybody at any age. But at this age, you know, more because you don't have the energy to unpack, and you know, I hate living in chaos and stuff like that. But I don't know, you know, 82 is okay. Even his 93 is okay, unless he breaks his hip. I don't know. There's a lot of loss. I mean, I've lost a lot of friends and a lot of family. And the pandemic, which no one has mentioned, has changed life a lot. I live in New York City. I briefly lived in East Hampton, I'm back in New York City. And for me, it's the only place to live. But that's because of the people and the stimulation and so on, which at the moment, isn't there. But also, so many people have died, and also, not you all, but a lot of my friends from 70s to our age, the pandemic really did something to them. They sort of have a collective agoraphobia. I mean, they get so frightened to go out that now that they can go out, and even if they're vaccinated, they're just very slow to venture out. I mean, nobody entertains, all restaurants just open. It used to be, places you go out all the time and you meet new people all the time in New York, and you can make new friends all the time. You don't have to, it just happens. It's not like that anymore. So to me, it's part of getting older, but actually it's what COVID did. And I don't know, I think people should go on to what they love to do, or if there's something else they would love to do, they should do that. But you who were a psychologist, there's a psychologist here named Martin Bergman, who lived to be 100, and he only cut down his workload by a third. Very well known here. He had a 100th birthday party at the New York Psychoanalytic Institute, and he spoke for like half an hour. And he said, we have to keep going, therapists, because it takes us a long time to get good. Listening to him, you know he's good. And he was still, going to meetings and writing papers and seeing new patients, and he was hilarious, and and like a year later he just died. So there are these wonderful
That's
stories.
the way to do it.
Well, that's a good role model. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Especially, if you like it and you want to do it. I mean, why not? And especially since it doesn't require any physical effort, right? I have friends here who are psychologists and analysts and so on. And, they just sit in their chairs and they kept working all through the pandemic over the phone or on Zoom or
well, I was gonna say too, in work in psychotherapy, all the different kinds, the body of knowledge about it and techniques for it are really slow to change, unlike physics and biology and whatnot. So it's not that hard to keep up, actually. It might be hard to change your mode, to learn new things in a way and incorporate them and use them. But the body of literature and the basic ideas haven't changed a lot. So that makes it easier than in other fields. So.
John.
I just remember the marvelous performance of Anne in the Mozart Concerto 19, I think, with the Reed Orchestra. It was wonderful. Thank you, thank you, Matt.
Well, thank you for saying that. I remember. Was Herb Gladstone, who was conducting that orchestra? Do you remember?
And you played an instrument in that? You played an instrument?
Oh yeah, I was a concert pianist. I mean, not when I was at Reed, but like a concert pianist, professional.
Thanks.
And so I played this Mozart concerto with the Reed Orchestra. I can't remember how it happened or who conducted the orchestra, but
Boy, good memory.
And then
I've often been surprised at having a moment when something special is going on, but not how special. It takes a few years to realize that was one of those moments. The next person, my list is alphabetical. So the next person on my list is John Quitzland.
Hi, John.
Well, there's an awful lot that I could cover. I'll try to be selective. I'll try to keep an eye on the time. I was probably one of the first of us to retire. I retired from gainful employment in the year 2000. And my wife, Toby, and I moved from Washington, D.C. to Bainbridge Island near Seattle, where I grew up. I was rejoining a family. My parents were up in years. My mother was declining in health with a mild form of Alzheimer's, and my father was eager to get me back in the circle of the family. I have 3 brothers here, and we cared eventually for my mother on a 24/7 basis, giving her company and care. So that was, and I was ready to retire for other reasons. I had not finished my scholarly work, and in fact, probably 90% and all the best of my scholarship was published after I retired, because I was able to complete a thick book in my specialty, and subsequently another significant piece of scholarship in the field of Renaissance studies. But I came from Washington, D.C. to the other Washington, to a community that my family had deep roots in. And I've had a second career. I've been very, very active. In recent years, I've been a member of the Planning Commission, and I'm now running for city council. So I'm still working full time, but just not getting paid much. Actually, on city council, the pay is significant now. They just upped the pay very generously for not for my benefit, but it is going to benefit me. So that'll be nice. If I win the race, I'll know in November. Start 4 years of service. I'm going to be much older when I finish 4 years of city council, because
You bet.
it's a very contentious environment. But anyway, I've done that sort of thing. I want to talk a little bit about experience of loss. My experience is somewhat similar to what Cliff was describing. Toby had 2 instances of breast cancer. You have a second primary if you have a second breast. You have the potential anyway. And so she had a long history with breast cancer. And it was demanding on both of us. And after years of being cancer-free, the metastatic cancer emerged, and she had about 4 years of not of decline, but of dealing with not the cancer so much as the treatments that kept it at bay. And then now it's about 4 years since her passing, and I can talk about emotional surprises and difficulties, unexpected consequences of things that I thought I had figured out. I want to say, be careful how you handle the making of a will and the appointing of an executor. I was executor to Toby's estate, and of course we had a great deal of community property. But in the rush and the turmoil of the last month or 2 of her life, she did not make the personal bequests that the will called upon her to make. She did not make a list of gifts. She wasn't clear in communication with our sons as to exactly how various things would be distributed. And I did not deal well with the aftermath of all of that. If you and your partner have a lot of property, hire a firm that will help with the dispersal and help with the planning before passing, because it's terrible. It can be terrible, I should say. And I'm far from ready with disposal of my valuables and distribution to my sons and other people. That's going to be a hill that I haven't climbed yet, and it's something to deal with, because in the context of grieving, you do not want to have to be overwhelmed with practical and legal routines and obligations and so on. So get help if you have something really complicated to deal with and you don't have. I would not turn to my sons as my parents turned to one of my brothers. I would not turn to my sons to do the sorting out. They've got other things to do, and they're in different places. So how much more time do I have? A couple minutes, maybe?
A couple minutes, yeah.
What else do I want to say? The best of it all, as I say now, having really moved fully through the grieving process and so on, there's a lot of life left. Fortunately, I have had cataract surgery. I've had some other minor things taken care of. I'm glad that I still have my wits about me, and I did learn to write as an English professor, and then I adapted to writing for a different sort of audience. I wrote as a newspaper columnist on community affairs for a while, and then for a blog sponsored by one of the organizations on Bainbridge Island, writing about the values of sustainability and the difficulty of getting a community together around the right sort of program. We've got all sorts of unsettled problems we're a wealthy community, but we're almost monochromatically white, and it's unjust and unfortunate that we don't have a better set of plans for housing and so on. So I'm worried about that, but having such roots in this place, I hope I have some authority or some wisdom and an ability to communicate with other people. That's what I'm up to now.
Carol mentioned just in passing that sort of suggested it's hard to plan for the future because you haven't got there yet. You don't know what it is. And it's always surprising. Michael Bratt, we skipped on my alphabetical list. Mike, there you are.
So I just unmuted. I left Reed, didn't go to graduation. I've got a great picture with Alan Ryan of us with not joints, because we didn't have joints in those days.
Yes, we did.
Some people did, and why didn't they tell us? It wasn't fair. It just wasn't fair.
Right.
I left there married to Ann Trumbull, who was 2 years behind us. We had a couple of kids. We lived in Berkeley for a number of years. We divorced. I became a virologist. I was going to say like Alan Ryan, but you don't become a virologist like Alan Ryan and last as long as he has in it. So after doing a postdoc also in Berkeley, I went to Harvard. I taught at Harvard Medical School for 7 years, and then moved to the University of Massachusetts Medical School in Worcester and was there for about 25 years. Later in my life as a virologist, I sort of lost interest in the science itself. I became more interested in the people who were working with me, the students. Actually, one of my students is at the University of Pennsylvania and one of the leading people working on coronaviruses. I found that I really like working with the people, and I like working with on problems. And I was the chair of a department for 12 years, 15 years. I became the vice dean of the medical school and then the provost of the medical center. and spent the things that I enjoyed most were dealing with faculty problems, dealing with the underpayment of the women faculty, and dealing with those kinds of things. I retired. I think I'm tied for the earliest retiree among the group. I did retire in the year 2000. I did so actually quite happily, enthusiastically, although it was ultimately as a result of a lawsuit where I sued the university for an agreement they had been made with me. And since I'd written all the rules, I understood pretty well. You don't sue unless you've got a very good cause, unless there's something really really important involved. And then the third thing is that you've got a support system. And I had my lovely wife, Rachel, who we have now been married for 51 years. We have 2 kids, so I have a total of 4 kids altogether and 4 grandchildren. I didn't have a plan for life, but I would have to say I'm another one of those who has been pretty happy with what I've gotten in life. And a lot of it, I would say, was fairly serendipitous. I went to Reed because, well, I had a girlfriend at age 15, or I think I was 16, and she had just finished her first year at Reed. And I decided, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Reed. And so I did. And I went there as a physicist. What's that?
That's the right reason.
Yeah. And I went as a physics major, and I lasted about 6 weeks as a physics major, and thought, well, maybe sociology might be the thing, but I didn't know what sociology was, and really didn't know what I was going to do until the summer of after the first year. And I was talking with Hugh Tilson, who's somewhere in the background there, who had been my roommate. And Hugh said, why don't you go to medical school? I said, okay, I'll go to medical school. So I took my first biology course in my junior year at Reed. And ultimately, and then I was going to go to medical school, but at the end of the junior year, I was offered an opportunity to do research in Larry Rubin's lab. And I said, okay, I think I'm not going to go to medical school. I'm going to become a research scientist. So I became a research scientist. And life was just really like that from then on. I mean, the experience at Berkeley was a great experience. I was able to discover something that was interesting and gave me a good fodder to get my next job. I walked into Harvard Medical School where I knew somebody was leaving a faculty position, and the chairman of the department said, "Would you like to give a seminar?" It can't be today because David Baltimore is giving a seminar, but if you'd like to give a seminar tomorrow, we'll take you both out to dinner tonight, so it'll only cost one dinner. And I gave the seminar, and he called me into the office and he said, "We'd like to offer you a job." So I had, there was no affirmative action, there was nothing. I just got a job teaching at Harvard Medical School by giving a seminar that one day. I always like to say I got it instead of David Baltimore, but he had already taken a job somewhere else. I enjoyed my 6 years there. I enjoyed the time that I had at the University of Massachusetts. I want to give a plug for basic science, and actually, because as I said, I sort of in later years found that I was enjoying more working with people and the people and solving people's problems. We probably, most of us in this Zoom would not be here today if it weren't for basic science. That what it was the development of the vaccines and the technology that's involved in it is just absolutely amazing. And, it wasn't because people were working on coronaviruses, because people were not learning, people were. So, just a big shout out for basic science. I don't know that I have anything more. I could go on and talk for hours and hours and hours.
So could we all.
But I notice we're approaching our limit here, so I'll stop at that point.
Bob Frazier has just joined us in alphabetical order.
Hi, Murray. It's been a long time.
Yes,
Hello
it
to
has.
everybody.
No.
I have to say, you all look older,
Yeah.
including me.
Yeah.
So I just came in the middle of this.
We're giving little sketches and raising issues that we think others would want to be concerned with. A few minutes.
Well,
in 5 minutes, yeah.
Or less.
Well,
Or less.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you.
And Connie's next.
Between Reed and Harvard, I with a sort of a combination of chutzpah and hubris, I started my own university back in 1975 because I think I could do it better. And it was sort of a combination of the best of Reed's liberal arts education and the best of Harvard, which was sort of shallow, actually. And I had this notion that balanced education of body, mind, and spirit was better than just educating the head. So I did. I went ahead, set up a few miles from Stanford, and I didn't really look on them as competition because I had a very different psychology program than they did. And it's been around since 75. It's grown from an institute to a university. I immediately became sick of it.
What's the name of it?
Oh, it's now called Sophia University, after the Greek for wisdom. And I did become sick and tired of administration within about a month. And my mantra was, get me out of this, I want to teach. Which eventually I did. And then just a year ago, I started a publishing company because I thought I could do that better. So we'll see how it goes. I figure it's one way to stay young is to take on more impossible tasks. And here I am.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Connie.
Let's take it.
Where are you?
I'm sorry, where am I?
Where are you?
Where am I? I live in Los Altos.
Oh.
The school's in Palo Alto. And
what was it? What did it used to be named? You said it was
used to be called the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology.
Okay, because of that, I knew it by that name.
Yeah.
With Jim Fadiman?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I thought. Jim Fadiman and Toby Gersten were sweethearts in high school. My late wife. So, and I haven't been in touch with Jim Fadiman, but he's an important person in family life here. That's interesting.
Yeah. And so
Yeah, I just want to say he was influential in my life too. I went encounter group, and it opened up a lot of doors. It really made a difference.
Connie, you're muted.
I want Ellen, I want to just hear a tiny bit more about that. I mean, I'll just say for 8 years or something, I was out of the country, and I missed all of that sitting around encountering stuff. As I just, I was in the UK where they didn't do that from 68 to 76. So I was just curious.
I think we should exchange emails somehow. Somebody should set that up so we can connect with each other, because I had sessions with Fritz Perls, and we haven't got to me yet. I don't know if you're going to get to me because the time is running out. We've
got until 2:30. I'm sorry, 3:30 Central Time. I don't know where you are.
I should just, let me just jump in and say, if you want to continue the conversation past 1:30 Pacific, I can drop in my own kind of personal Zoom link account link and get you set up over there. So basically it'd just be like moving rooms. So just think about that.
Okay, we will.
Well, Constance, I'm interested to hear what you started to say something, to hear more about what you're doing, what's on your mind.
Connie, you're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, were you asking?
You're
something?
next. You're now.
I'm next.
Well, I was saying, you started to say something about your experience, and I wanted to hear more.
Carol, are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I mean, as a taxi driver.
Yes, I'm talking to you.
Oh.
Hard to know. Yeah.
Okay. 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 5 minutes. I share a lot of the landscape. We came along at a time from 57 to now, and the landscape changed so much. And like Michael Brad and John and others, I feel hugely lucky looking back, because when I emerged from or entered puberty, so I was wearing a Dorothy Collins collar, and you had to be a virgin, and all kinds of other stuff that just went out the window. And I very happily jumped out of the window every time I found an open one. So and I started at Brandeis for 2 years, and I was a scholarship kid who couldn't fail. And I was in a bind, as I've explained another time, because I knew I didn't know how to think. And I knew from ice skating, if I didn't fall down, I hadn't tried something new. So I knew I was going to get bad grades, and that was not. So anyway, I transferred to Reed in 59 because it was open book and independent study. And I was pre-med, but I immediately took Middle English. And so I had a great landing at Reed. Just wonderful with John. I remember John. I remember music. I remember sitting in on everything. I was just, anyway. So, and then as John and Michael, so doors just opened up. So Scotty, Arthur Scott, knew someone at the medical school. I was going to go to the Peace Corps. I just created the Peace Corps. So that was where I was going to go. And then all of a sudden, Arthur Scott had a friend at the medical school who had some money. So I decided to buy a houseboat and become a graduate, so I started in medical school, but I quickly realized I didn't want to spend my life in big buildings with 6 strangers touching them. So I switched to an academic PhD. I mean, I'm just, this is just fun truth telling at this age, right? So I got my PhD in 4 years very quickly because, like Michael, I described something that had never been described before, a kind of Sherlock Holmes mystery thing. And then I spent, so the next 37 or 40 years, I was what I affectionately think of as a science slut. I was a girl, so that was a situation where I could postdoc for the guys who were writing lectures, and I could do the I could do the bench work, I could do the grunt work for them, and in the end, I married a wonderful man, a writer, and because we could live anywhere, I had the brush with a boss in the academic community and a boss in the corporate community, both of whom told me I couldn't go away. So then I decided I needed to figure out a way to generate my own salary. So I formed an engineering consulting group, and we wrote proposals to get SBIR grants, commercialization of technology at engineering universities. It was a new situation. Roland Tibbets, 1979, stood up in Congress and NSF, and he said he's got a great idea, win-win. So we wrote proposals. I got awarded contracts as a PI. I was no longer much of a scientist capable of another instrument than a telephone, but I could hire the consultants. I could pay for a graduate student to do the work. And and that led to business development. And I ended up doing due diligence for venture capitalists. And every time a job was done, a contract was over, I could say goodbye. I was very welcome at any engineering universities, Polytechnic, Northeastern, Rutgers, and because they liked the overhead money. So I could hold my own row without going for any prize, which was being held by someone I had to give the power to. I was careful to avoid having anyone having power over me that I couldn't take back. So that was, and two great kiddos and lots of sailing and traipsing around the world. I'm very interested to hear and read more about Borneo and other anthropological things. Anyway, by the way, if we get to, so the pandemic has been magical for me because I'm like a relentless homeschooler person. I go down, I can't tell you, half a dozen paths that, you know, I read a mystery murder in Old Bombay and I realized I didn't know about the Parsis. So I just read another couple of books and I learned all about Zoroastrianism and the Parsis. So I go down half a dozen roads without guilt. Now, forever after. I used to be a fear of missing out, you know, FOMO type person, running out the door, theater, everything. What's the parade I'm missing? No. Now I'm completely hooked to just gulping down as much as I can about the world. And nothing's about me. That's the wonderful thing about getting heading into extreme old age. It's not about you, but you really learn that. I mean, you thought you knew that, but your ego really goes overboard now. You got it.
I got it.
All right.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
Somebody's got some screaming going on in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't see who it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it's you, please mute.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next, let's see. Dan Schott. I think he's here.
Yeah, I'm here. I just had to unmute. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Slight echo.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do about that.
Move closer.
Okay. Similar to you guys, I sort of bumbled through life, not well planned, but it happened. Between my junior and senior year, I took a summer vacation to Europe and just explored, and I met a guy. I'm sorry?
I can't hear you very well.
No.
You can't hear?
No.
Right.
Okay, I don't know what to do about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know about my setup. Anyhow, I met a guy and he gave me he was a lab director at Stanford Research Institute. And he gave me a subject for my thesis, which I used. And then when I got out of Reed, I didn't have any job prospects. So I wrote this guy and he gave me a job at Stanford Research Institute. And then it turns out they had an honors program with Stanford. So I ended up going to Stanford, getting my engineering degree there, and graduated in '65 when the market was very hot for engineers, and I had a whole bunch of choices. And I decided to go to Sperry in Phoenix, where I live now still, because they told me I'd be working in computers, and I thought that was a thing of the future. Well, it turned out I never worked on computers. I ended up working in digital displays, and it started out with liquid crystals and plasma panels, and starting out with small things, numeric displays, and then the watches, and then the calculators, and then the flat panel displays like you're probably looking at now, and then television. So that's basically what I've been doing since I graduated. I also retired early, retired in 2002, And I was very concerned about retiring. And my kids, I have two girls and they have two each, so they have 4 grandchildren. And yeah, they said, no, don't worry, there's plenty of things you can do, and you always are always busy. So I went ahead and made the decision to retire reasonably early. And my wife and I traveled for a while. I raced a sailboat. I got into sailing big time and volunteering with Habitat for Humanity. And that's basically what I've done. I met a gal when I was at Stanford that I married. Was married till she died, which was 5 years ago, for 50 years. And kids moved out of home, and she's gone. So I left. I sold the home and moved to an active adult community in an outskirt of Phoenix, and that's where I have been living, and things have been good.
How do you like living in this place? What's it like?
It's not like the old home life with the family and living in a community with kids, but the whole community that I lived in changed, became very affluent, and I didn't belong there anymore. In this community, there's just lots of things going on: book clubs, all kinds of sports, all kinds of games. You know, poker is one that I do twice a week. And hiking and visiting around the country, and that kind of thing is nice, but it isn't the same as the old married life.
You miss that, yeah.
So I'm going to move back. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine. Robert Scott? Am I not?
He's here.
John's hands up.
Oh, I just wanted.
John?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
No, Robert Scott is next on my list, and I don't see him.
Yeah,
So Dan, you're next.
I see him, and he's not muted.
You see him, and he's muted.
And he's not
muted. There he is. Yeah.
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay. Well, I went to read in 56, and was sick in my junior year, so I went back to University of Pennsylvania and took some classes there, and then came back to read in biology. Did my thesis with Frank Guilliam, who was the neurophysiologist in the biology department in those days, and decided I wanted to go to medical school. So I applied and got into the University of Pennsylvania, where I took my degree, and went to Buffalo, New York for my my pediatric residency. And where I had my whole life fully arranged. I was going to become a pediatrician, and I was going to get a academic position in a medical school, and everything looked very good. And I arranged to go to the NIH in the Public Health Service to work on DNA viruses. Those are things like adenoviruses. But I had a swerve. And the swerve was quite frightening to me, because having gone to a Quaker school, I was really quite so much of a pacifist. And what happened was that a colleague of mine who was with the CDC came to me sometime, I've forgotten, in maybe December of the first year of internship, and said I had a security problem. And I thought, oh my God, what are they after me? Is it focus? Was it focus that did it to me? You remember focus? Everybody remembers focus. Okay, good. Yeah. So I came down to Washington, D.C. To see what was going on. And I went to the Public Health Service, and they cold shouldered me. They didn't tell me anything. So I went I was staying with John Quitsland, who was in Washington at the time, he and Toby. And Toby suggested that I get in touch with Senator Clark, who was the senator from Philadelphia. So I got in touch with Senator Clark, and he, one of his staffers called me back and said, well, he'd made an appointment at 4:30 on Friday at the Health, Education, and Welfare Department, which was the department that is now HHS. It's a huge, big building on the south side of Independence Avenue in Washington. And I arrived about, 4:25, and floods of people were coming out of this building. I had no idea what was going on. Everybody was leaving the building. I thought there might have been a fire scare or maybe terrorists if it was these days. But it turns out that the US government closes at 4:30 in the afternoon. And this was Friday, and everybody was leaving the building, and I was coming in. So I went up to the 4th floor where I was told that the security officer for Health, Education, and Welfare was, and that he would help me. So I went up to the 4th floor, and everybody was out of the office, but the office that I was going to, the door was open, but the secretary wasn't there. And the secretary was not there. So I called in and said, is anybody here? And a voice came from the inner office saying, yes, yes, come in. And I came in and he said, sit down. So I was sitting in front of this huge desk. He was behind it, and behind him were great windows. And it was 4:30, 5 o'clock-ish on a winter afternoon. At any rate, at the time I was there, the sun was coming right through these west-facing windows, right in my eyes. And I sort of felt like I was getting the 3rd degree. So I started to ask him questions, and he always answered with a question. And so I got no information, and I don't think he got much. But on his table was 3 dossiers. There was a big dossier, a middle-sized dossier, and an itty-bitty dossier. Turns out the big-sized dossier was my mother, the medium-sized dossier was my father, and the itty-bitty dossier was me. And I didn't know what was going on.
A whole family of security risks.
So anyway, I also had an appointment at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. So I went over there and talked to them, and they said, well, they might be interested, but my induction into the military was somewhere down the road, and they would, if I got in touch with them when it became nearer, they'd see whether they had a slot for me. So I went back to Buffalo. I had several interviews with the military intelligence people there, and I got a message from the city, from what did they call them? Anyway, the guy who brings you into the military, telling me to appear at the City Hall in Philadelphia at 5 o'clock in the morning for shipment up to Fort Dix.
Oh.
So I had a rather anxiety-provoking time, and eventually I got word that that it was coming to an end. So I got in touch with them, and they said yes, they did have a place, and so I was relieved to go to the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, where I was in the Department of Virus Diseases. And this was a real swerve for me. I was not expecting. I was very unhappy about being inducted into the military, but it turned out to be a very rewarding career, which I extended to 21 years. And Walter Reed was really at that time the home office of many infectious disease specialists in the United States who had been there during the Second World War. So it was a very exciting place to be. I found very exciting people to work with and very interesting things that I never would have dreamed of being involved with had I remained a civilian. And I was privileged to have spent about half my military career outside the United States in in places like Thailand and Egypt. Then I left the military and went to the WHO for 5 years. And then I went back and worked with the military in Thailand, in Nepal for almost 10 years. So that's the sort of basic things that I've done. I'm now living just outside of Washington, D.C., in a very nice apartment. And we're off to, my late wife became ill in Egypt, and we came back to the United States, where she subsequently died. And I married a very lovely Swiss lady, and we're returning to Switzerland next Thursday. So that's basically but let me just say that I finally figured out what the security risk was. When I was at Reed, Mark Schaefer was my roommate, a very good friend. And he had gone to Moscow to the World Youth Festival. And I thought that was kind of a neat thing to do. And so I didn't go to there, but I applied for the next one, which was in Helsinki, Finland. And I applied through a group in Canada. When I got there, I found out that there was also a U.S., what was it called? This U.S. Students Association was there as well, so that there was sort of a mixed group of Americans. There was the group that went through Canada, and there's the group that came through called National Student Association. Well, I couldn't go see the Chinese, who I was very interested in going to. And so they put me with the Czechoslovakians, who were very swerve. And I decided, well, there wasn't anything of interest there. So I went off with some Finnish friends of ours up to a place called Nurmes, which was right up on the Soviet border. And I spent about a week there, and then I came back and went back to where I was before. And it wasn't until some years later when I read a book by, I think his name was Dwight, anyway, called The $1 Billion Brain. And it was about a spy who had gone close to the Soviet Union and disappeared into the Soviet Union and was trained as a spy by the Soviets and then sent out. And I realized that that's what they thought I might have done. So that's my story anyway.
I'm seeing in my attendance list Robert Crow and Lucy Pratt, who are
Hugh Tilson is there too.
Who?
Hugh Tilson.
He's on my list. These are
I
people
just
that
want
are
to say
not on
that
my
if you don't
list.
get to me by 1:30, you're going to lose me.
We're gonna. Okay. Who's me? Ellen.
It's Ellen.
Let's do Ellen.
Let's get to you now.
Well, my plan was to say what my next 3 or 4 people will be. So it'll be Ellen, Robert, and where did she go? Rachel.
Don't we have to switch to what we were told was another Zoom? Because we only have that.
Yeah, we may as well do that now. Can we do that, Karen?
And what about Lynn? We haven't heard from Lynn.
No, she's on my list too.
We haven't heard from me.
We haven't heard from you and from Fritz.
Rachel, right.
Well, let's go ahead then. And
Wait a minute, Rachel wants to say something urgently.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate getting to sit in and listening to your stories. I don't know how much I knew you guys. I recognize your faces and I knew you were around campus, and obviously I'm 3 years behind you. So I'm just fascinated with your stories and how many virologists there are among you. That's fascinating. And I'm going to suggest to my 60th anniversary reunion committee that we do something like this. So thank you. I don't really need to share anything else.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would like to say, why don't we go to Ellen right now? So we do that and then we make our switch.
Okay, Carrie, can you send
for
the
that.
Zoom around while we're doing that? Ellen?
yes, I'm going to post the link in the chat, but don't go there yet.
Okay,
Okay.
Ellen,
Okay, so I'm on, I guess.
you're on.
Yeah, I just wrote down all the different things that I've done. I think, Cliff, if you can, I don't know if you can turn off your volume.
There's an echo, yeah.
No, you just do it on your machine, because I'm echoing. I could hear it.
Where's my good?
Well, we're not computer experts here. Anyway, I'm visiting in Portland. I came from California. I'm staying at the hostel. And Cliff, we haven't seen each other since 1961, and we don't know each other actually. But here I am, and I didn't have one career. I had mainly I didn't want to work. I finished Reed and I started traveling, and my first career, I was a dance therapist, which is very helpful because it taught me how to take care of that side of my life. So I've been able to I still exercise and stretch, and I highly recommend it. We do too much sitting, and it's one thing I have trouble with listening to this Zoom. Oh, I think he did it. Great. Because sitting this much is, after a while, I'm going to stand up. Right. That was one of the things I did. And then a couple of things that I did was I was in a Gurdjieff Uspensky teaching for a long time, 35 years. And that was very helpful. And I did a lot of traveling through that group. I was one of the teachers for them, and it became international. It's still going on, but I left it. And so that was probably a bigger influence than academics, although Reed influenced me, but more, I think, in a psychological way than having a profession. More in that I'm just interested in many things, and I don't have any fear of learning something new. Right. And I don't feel limited by my age. Although I do, I think about, well, if I pursued this, do I really, I don't know how much more time I have, but to me, it's about the journey. It isn't so much having completed something, having done anything. It's kind of evolved like this, that now I've had so many wonderful things have happened in my life. And I think about them sometimes and I just smile to myself and I think, wow, how lucky I am. And I had to learn to use my mind that way. I didn't start out like that. I think when I was at Reed, the most positive thing, well, I loved all the learning, but I didn't know how to get along with people at all. And I was very negatively, I thought in negative terms. So the positive thing was folk dancing and being able to be with people through dance. And that led me to more in that direction, and also feeling free to be able to learn. So I've studied many things, and I still study languages. I started studying on my own mostly, although I would take classes now and then. I studied French, I studied Russian. And then later in my life, I got into horticulture, and I was an arborist for a while. And the last teaching that I did was in extension of the junior college in Sonoma County, where I live. I was teaching how to prune fruit trees. So I'm very tuned in to trees. And I feel very lucky. I really appreciate the different shapes of the leaves. Right. And Portland is fantastic, especially after Sonoma County, because here the trees, they grow above the third-story buildings. They grow very tall. And it's just such a marvelous experience to be amongst them. But I kind of stopped doing that, and I continued with many things that I'd already been doing. I didn't think of retirement as, because I didn't have that kind of life. So I was already interested in gardening. I'm active in a community garden. I was volunteer with the library. I love being in libraries. And now I'm visiting, I'm visiting Portland, and in the hostel in Northwest Portland, people come from all over the world, and some Reed grads stay there sometimes. and you can walk to Powell's. So let me see, and then I wrote a bunch of things here so I wouldn't forget. Oh yeah, and then after just before COVID, I started playing the piano kind of after my grandson. I was helping him with driving him to the piano lessons. So I started playing the piano, and then I thought I'd take a class. And so now I ended up being in the music program in the junior college. And I was able to do some music classes online. And so that's what I'm doing now, is I'm a kind of early intermediate piano player. And it's just wonderful. It's wonderful to play an instrument because especially piano, because I used to play violin, but the piano, it gives back to you. And another thing you can do when you retire is you can sing. You can sing in a choir. You don't need to sing.
Yes.
You can sing. So I think there's a lot of options. Anyway, I guess that's, I'm sure if I could keep going, but I won't.
Ellen, this is a general point, really. My impression.
I don't hear you
your
if you're
impression of you
speaking.
at Reed was very different. I thought you were a very interesting person. I wish I'd had more time to meet you. Let's all switch over to the Zoom.
Does
link.
everyone see the Zoom link
No.
in the chat?
Open your chat. Y'all have your
You
chats.
see that bottom menu bar, there's a chat icon. So go there and it's gonna say it's waiting on me to let you in. So I'll go let you in. But I just wanna make sure everyone's able to open that link.
Everybody.
I haven't been able to open it.
I can't see it.
I can't see it.
Can you see your chat?
No.
No.
So there should be a bottom little menu bar, like where you mute and unmute yourself.
My menu bar at the top, but I don't see it.
And there should be maybe like a chat, like a little chat icon. It'll say chat.
Well,
So
so we're supposed to press on the
No,
chat, are we?
I found mine.
I don't see chat.
Okay, so where's the?
In the bottom at the center on my Zoom, it's a
Oh,
speech
goodness.
bubble like in cartoons.
Okay, so if you're in both, it'll get a little hairy.
I'm gonna miss you all because I don't think I'm gonna get there.
So now you're gonna click on there and we're gonna transfer.
No, it should work for everybody if you're on Zoom now.
Have we shifted over?
No.
Okay, so
You can join.
hold on. If you can hear me, I'm gonna email you the link. I'm gonna email you.
Okay.
Okay.